It was the year 1914 when an 8-year-old boy was playing in a Japanese village. Suddenly, he saw a machine moving on 4 wheels. It was Ford's Model T, which left the child utterly amazed. This was the day when that 8-year-old boy first became fascinated with cars and mechanical parts. His name was Soichiro Honda, and little did anyone know that in the future, we would see his name on every small and large car. Let's revisit the story of this remarkable individual. Soichiro Honda was born in 1906 in a small village near Mount Fuji in Japan. His father was a blacksmith who also worked part-time repairing bicycles. Honda's 5 siblings had already passed away due to various illnesses, so his parents had high hopes for this child. However, he showed little interest in academics. Instead, Honda was more fascinated by helping his father repair bicycles. When he turned 16, he saw a job advertisement in the newspaper. Art Shokai, an automobile service station in Tokyo, was looking for technicians. Honda wrote a letter applying for the job and was fortunate to receive a positive reply. This was the moment when Honda left his home and school, heading to Tokyo with hopes of earning a living. However, Honda's dream was shattered when he arrived at Art Shokai in Tokyo. The company owner initially had Honda doing cleaning and odd jobs, even assigning him to babysitting duties. What else could poor Honda do? On one hand, he had left his home and parents, and on the other hand, he was being made to do menial work. He was ashamed to go back to his village because he didn't have the courage to face his parents. This was the reason he was forced to do odd jobs there for the next several months. After just a few months, the owner of Art Shokai also started taking workshop jobs from Honda. Honda had been very interested in this work from the beginning, so he understood things easily. Within a few months, he had learned a lot about all types of vehicles and their parts. During this time, Art Shokai also built 2 sports cars. The first was the Art Daimler and the second was the Curtiss. Both were made using used engines, and they even secured first position in the 1924 Japanese Motor Car Championship. Until now, Honda was a good mechanic, but in this race, he sat alongside the driver as an engineer. This was the event after which Soichiro Honda made motorsports his religion. For the next several years, he continued working at Art Shokai while also gaining valuable experience. In 1928, at the age of 22, his employer decided to open another branch. This new branch was to be located in Hamamatsu City. The owner entrusted Honda with the responsibility of running it. Honda started this new Art Shokai branch with just 1 worker and grew it to 30 employees in only 2 years. By this time, he had also become a brilliant mechanic and racing driver. Utilizing his expertise, he designed a sports car for his employer that could reach speeds of 120 km per h, breaking all previous records. This record remained unbeaten in Japan for the next 20 years. Honda's importance in the eyes of Art Shokai's owner had grown significantly. He aspired to open his own workshop, but fate seemed to have other plans. In 1936, Honda suffered a horrific accident during a race. In this accident, although his life was saved, his left arm was fractured, his shoulder was dislocated, and his face was covered in wounds. He felt like his life was over, as he could no longer work as a mechanic or participate in racing. After several months of recovery, he approached the owner of Art Shokai and requested to change his role. He explained that he could no longer do repair work, but instead proposed the idea of starting a separate company to manufacture spare parts. Art Shokai's stakeholders immediately rejected Honda's idea. They were already profitable and didn't want to take on any new risks. Following this rejection, Honda decided he would open the parts manufacturing company on his own. In 1936, at the age of 30, he partnered with his friend to establish Tokai Seiki Heavy Industry. He opened the company and appointed his friend Shikariro Kato as its president. But while they had started the company, Honda lacked the investment needed to keep it running. He worked all day at a job to make ends meet, while at night he tried to make engine pistons for his new company. For the next several months, he continued this routine, but success eluded him. Instead, he grew weaker from working constant shifts. One failure after another blocked his path. That's when he decided to enroll in a university to master metallurgy. In 1939, after 3 years of relentless effort, he finally succeeded in creating a piston. He then quit his day job and devoted himself full-time to piston manufacturing. However, he was unaware that the pistons he made still had many flaws. When he offered his pistons to Toyota, they rejected 407 out of 450 designs. This news hit Honda like a bolt of lightning. Since there was no way back now, he began traveling across Japan to understand the needs of various companies. He toured extensively, visiting different factories and meeting with car manufacturers. He spent the next few years gaining a deeper understanding of the market. After that, Honda once again started making pistons. This time, they met the quality standards of all companies involved. These pistons met the quality control requirements of all the companies, and Honda started receiving orders. Once again, Honda began to see its dreams realized. To fulfill these orders, his company hired 2,000 workers. Honda's happiness was short-lived, only lasting a few months. But who could have known? In 1941, Japan entered World War II and the ministry took over several Japanese companies, including Soichiro Honda's. Honda was demoted to senior managing director of his own company, and chaos ensued as the company's workers were drafted into military service. The next 3 years passed in extremely difficult circumstances, but in 1944, an incident occurred that completely shattered Honda's hopes. During an air raid, a missile directly hit Honda's factory. The entire country's situation was deteriorating rapidly, and Japan appeared to be losing the war. Then, in 1945, 2 nuclear attacks occurred, which utterly devastated Japan. Following this event, Japan surrendered to the Americans. The war was now over, but Honda had lost everything. He sold his remaining assets to Toyota for 4,500 yen and once again found himself jobless. This situation wasn't unique to Honda. In fact, the entire Japan was going through a severe crisis. The economy was melting down, and severe food and water shortages along with inflation had crippled everyone. Getting public transport was extremely difficult because even petrol had become scarce in Japan. During this time, Honda came across a small engine from the Japanese Imperial Army which they used to power wireless radios. Driven by his habit, an idea struck him. He thought, why not solve his transportation problem by attaching this engine to a bicycle? This would make transportation both easier and cheaper. During that time, people were already struggling with inflation. So when they saw this engine mounted on a bicycle, everyone thought it was a brilliant idea. Honda managed to get a few used engines, but the demand was so high that they decided to design their own new engine. It was the first time in history that Honda's logo appeared on a machine. Honda didn't have enough money to mass produce these motorized bicycles, so they wrote an open letter to 18,000 shopkeepers. People had so much faith in Honda that 3,000 shopkeepers responded positively and even paid in advance. Over the next 3 years, Honda developed a motorcycle that perfectly met the market's needs. They launched it under the name Super Cub, which immediately took the market by storm. This model was so successful that in 1958, it even surpassed the sales of America's own Triumph and Harley-Davidson. Because Honda had a great passion for racing, so they decided to start making sports bikes, going to various bike races and taking note of the special features of the winning bikes. In that era, such sports competitions served as more than just races. They were marketing tools for manufacturing companies. Within a few years, Honda launched their first sports bike, which achieved first place in 62 international racing competitions, making the Honda name famous worldwide. After living for 62 years, Soichiro Honda had finally achieved success. But the dream he had held since childhood was still unfulfilled. Honda now wanted to venture into car manufacturing as well. Many people tried to dissuade him from doing so, but he wouldn't listen to anyone. At that time in Japan, companies like Toyota and Nissan had already established their businesses, making it very difficult for newcomers to carve out a place in the market. Honda launched its first pickup truck, the T360, which failed. They then introduced the S500 sports car, but only 1,300 units were sold. After years of hard work and dozens of rejected designs, the Honda Civic was finally launched in 1972. This is the car whose new models are still famous worldwide today. By 1980, Honda Motors had become Japan's third largest manufacturing company, and in just 10 years, it grew to become the third largest in the world. Today, we see the Honda name on cars, motorcycles, boat engines, plane engines, and dozens of power tools. Soichiro Honda retired from the company in 1973, just a year after the launch of the Honda Civic. On August 5, 1991, his life's journey came to an end. We hope you like and share. Thank you so much for your loving comments. See you in the next great video.